We both have met quite often the last days and weeks, and we have phoned much more. The last time we met was in Brussels in NATO and G7, and I'm very happy that we now have the chance to discuss together here. Es ist gut und wichtig, sich in der aktuellen Lage und diese
It is good and important to exchange views in the current situation, and I'm particularly delighted that we can have this exchange here today in London personally and not have to rely on telephone or VTCs amongst the G7 and the many other formats and meetings that we're having. And it's good progress that we meet here. Germany and the UK are long-standing allies and partners, and we will remain and continue to be that, although our friends have decided a while ago to not be part of the European Union anymore. The UK and Germany are close allies, also when it comes to the challenges and tasks ahead. It is with horror and indignation that we both are looking towards the east these days and weeks. We're looking to Russia's illegal attack on Ukraine. This war is devastating. It inflicts death, unfathomable suffering, and terrible destruction on Ukraine. The images from Bucha, Mariupol, and other places, the dramatic attack that we have learned about today, all of this is shocking indeed, and it has to be said clearly, it is atrocious. It is an atrocious war that inflicts terrible destruction and has many victims in Ukraine. Killing civilians is a war crime, and the Russian president bears responsibility for these war crimes. Boris Johnson and I absolutely share this assessment, and we see ourselves in complete agreement with large parts of the international community, for which law and moral principles continue to be the yardstick. This is why we support Ukraine actively with all the options that we have. In the civilian sector, Germany is the largest bilateral donor since 2014. And after the Russian attack on Ukraine, Germany revised its decade-long position and for the first time sent weapons and military goods to a war zone. And we continue to supply arms to Ukraine. We do this together, and we actually exchange views on this in order to bolster the defense of Ukraine against the Russian invasions. And, of course, we need to do everything in order to stop the senseless killing. And this is why I call upon Russia again to finally agree to a ceasefire and to withdraw its troops. We absolutely need to allow for humanitarian access and open safe corridors for people who want to leave. And we mustn't see military actions and have bombings on refugees time and again. This war needs to stop immediately. A pivotal and central element of our strategy is to impose drastic costs on Russia for this war of aggression. And this is why it is right that we have agreed in all the structures that we are part of to impose sanctions. That holds true for the G7. We also talked about this in the various phone calls that we had with other partners together, and we discussed this within the framework of NATO. We impose sanctions on the financial sector, on the Russian central bank, an extraordinary process that we haven't done, something that is unprecedented. I'm talking about sanctions on the Russian economy. And these sanctions are highly effective because, indeed, Russia is dependent on imports in the field of technology. Russia cannot replace these elsewhere in the global markets. And Europe and North America and Japan, South Korea, many countries that gather as democratic states are those who have the best and the most sophisticated technologies. And of course, it is also important to affect and hit the inner circle of the president and the oligarchs. And I explicitly want to state this in London as well. And I'm grateful that the sanctions were widened on many persons that are part of this circle of people. We have just accepted and adopted a fifth sanctions package within the European Union. We're not going to import coal anymore, and I'd like to use this opportunity to clearly state Germany is already starting to wean off its dependence, and we're diversifying our sources. We are investing large-scale in order to establish the technical and physical infrastructure that are necessary in order to import gas via the northern German shores. And we are also going to make sure with legal measures that there are no legal difficulties, but that we can implement our decisions quickly. We have imposed sanctions on the banking sector. We hit oligarchs, and we're going to continue to work in this regard. Unity is crucial. The unity of the European Union, the G7, the unity of NATO, the transatlantic unity, all of this is essential, and Putin did not expect this. He was certain that we would disagree, and he had to witness our unity, and he will continue to experience our unity. One of the terrible consequences of this terrible war is the fact that a large number of people had to leave the country. Millions of people had to flee Ukraine. Many countries in Europe have hosted refugees, in particular those along the borders, Poland, for instance, or Slovakia, Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania, and we are very grateful to these countries. We know that further countries such as the Czech Republic, Austria have hosted and received large numbers, and Germany is part of these countries as well. The biggest share of refugees has reached Poland, more than 2 million. We have more than 300,000 refugees in Germany, and this is why we're happy and grateful if many countries would practically participate in hosting refugees, because this will be a major task and challenge ahead. We don't know how refugee movements will evolve. We're seeing a different type of migration now than in other years. We have women and children, the elderly, and many people who are sick and disabled and need our support. We will shoulder this together, but against the backdrop of the developments in this war, we can't predict how many will follow, whether these families are able to return or whether the men are going to follow. We cannot predict this at present, but what we can say now is that we stand in solidarity, that we want to lend support to those who seek refuge, and we talked about this as well, and the UK also wants to lend a contribution to this effort. Boris mentioned it. We are going to intensify our cooperation on all levels. We're going to have a government consultations, an established consultation. We're going to begin and hosting a cabinet meeting at the beginning of the next year. Our foreign ministers are going to resume and continue their strategic dialogue. There are many challenges and topics at hand, topics related to the conflict in Ukraine, matters pertaining to defense and security, pertaining to climate, people-to-people exchange, mobility, and I mentioned it as well, questions pertaining to migration. We want to make progress and intensify relations between our two countries. We can build upon about a long-standing friendship, but this is what's important here. We both share the conviction that our relations are good when they don't only exist between the two of us, the heads of state, but when they're also when they exist between the people.